Welcome to the Courageous Parenting Show.
Hey guys, today's episode is super fire.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's super fire because we are talking about having confidence as a parent in the decisions that you make regarding your kids' educational choices and how that can potentially change from year to year. The process that we share with you guys about making lists and thinking is so good. But I hope that you are encouraged today. Pass this link on to anyone you know who maybe is struggling, feeling overwhelmed with what their decision is going to be. Maybe they're still trying to figure out last minute curriculums as a homeschool mom. Whatever the situation is, I know today's episode is going to meet you where you're at.
Hey, and all show notes are courageousparenting.com. We would love it if you shared the show. Please subscribe, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, so you never miss a show that comes out. And we'd love to hear from you. One of the ways we can hear from you is if you give a 5-star review, written review on one of the platforms too. And wow, we've just heard so many good things recently about the show. And so we're motivated to get it out there. Would you join us? We need help. We need a team to fulfill the 10 million legacies movement all around the world. Did you know people listen from 194 countries to the show?
Incredible.
Would you please share it with your church and share it with friends and on social and wherever else? We are on a journey together to have impact. Thank you so much. And hey, enjoy the show. Wow, you think dads have some hard decisions to make? I mean, come on.
It's true.
Talking about the future of the children and education choices, that's kind of weighty.
It is. It's not something that women make alone, especially if you're in a biblical marriage.
Sure.
I know that it would have been harder for me to stay faithful to the vision that we had if it wasn't for your support. I think that there's a lot of wisdom that is found when couples are working together on these decisions and they're together evaluating the world, the future, their kids' learning styles. There's just so much that goes into the decisions that you make in regards to your kids' education. But right now, lots of parents are making those decisions.
Yeah, and I would say all year too. It's just there's always thoughtfulness, isn't there, when you're intentional about curating a great educational experience for your children and making sure it lines up with the future too that they're going to be living in, and making sure it's covering the bases that are essential.
That's right. We're going to talk more about that at the very end during the unprecedented times tip. But for those of you who are listening in today, we are excited about today's topic because during this time of year, I mean, really, it's a large portion of the year where there's a lot of big decisions that are made in families in regards to their kids' education. What are you going to do? Public, private, charter, co-op? What other activities? Homeschool? What are the subjects that you're going to study with your kids? Then it's choosing what curriculum to use for the different subjects. And so we're really excited to dive in today. We have a few scriptures we're going to share with you guys, but over the years, we've gone through a lot of different changes in curriculum. Sometimes people will ask me, what curriculum do you use? And I go, are you asking what curriculum I'm using now or what I've used over the last 21 years?
Well, hang on just a second. So how many years have you been homeschooling?
We're going to be starting I think it's 21 years.
And I say you because predominantly you have been the homeschooler. I've been,
You've helped with certain subjects.
I help with things, but I would say the percentage-wise,
yes,
it's in your court largely.
Yeah.
And while I'm very supportive and I do help with certain things. So I think that if we go back, if we rewind though, in the beginning or even in the first 6 years, near the beginning to 6 years, there
was a lot of pressure this time of year back then.
Yeah.
A lot. And a lot of unknown. I know that, I think about those first few years, and what made me feel okay with saying yes to homeschooling was just making a commitment to that 1 year. And I wasn't thinking, I wasn't willing to commit to all the way through high school.
Yeah, you were really adamant about that. I remember because
take 1 year at a time is what I used to say.
Before we were homeschooling, I was very against homeschooling. But once I experienced the fruit of it in the first couple of years, I'm like, this is the way to go. Plus the flexibility of lifestyle, lots of different reasons. But then I was thinking and hopeful, I hope she wants to do this all the way through. Like, but you're really strict. You're like, I'm just going to do the next year.
Well, I think
because every year was a new year until you've had someone go through all the years.
Well, and there's a lot of pressure, and I admittedly I put a lot of pressure on myself, a lot more pressure than was probably needed, and I think that we all do that as moms. Right? Like if you're listening and you're a mom, you're like, yeah, raise my hand. I do that too, Angie. I think that there's the pressure of the expectations. I mean, just even the word scope and sequence for every grade level, for every state, right? Like I'm sure you've Googled them and looked them up. Like what are the milestones my kids are supposed to hit by certain grades? And am I on track? Are they on track? And then thinking that them being on track is a reflection of you. And then that means that what they're doing is meaning that you're either failing them or not, right? And so there's pressure of what man's expectations, what the world's expectations, maybe what your state's expectations.
I think too, as the world has become more professionalized, you think about it, and specialized and professionalized, meaning you have your specific kind of doctor that does this, and specific doctor that does this, which by the way is a good thing. I mean, because then you can get really, really good at this. The challenge of that, which is they don't know about other things and how their specialization always works with everything else integrated. But sometimes it can create pressure on us and make us feel unworthy of certain things.
As a homeschool parent.
Homeschool parent. Yeah. And I even relate that to the church. I relate that to a lot of things. It's like I spend like 12 hours preparing a sermon, and at the end of it, I'm like, I think anybody that loves the Lord and can read and has a mind could learn what I just learned in the last 12 hours. Yeah. Now I get it. Not everybody has the gift of teaching can deliver it, but to get that knowledge, everybody can. And so it's just an interesting thing. And anybody can lead their children in homeschool. It's there for them. And I think sometimes that professionalization puts a weighty pressure on it.
Especially in the high school years, for sure. I think that for myself, those first few years,
Steve and I realized that we were getting too comfortable with the world's vision of how to raise our children.
What Angie and Isaac have done in creating this is literally phenomenal.
This program provided awesome scripture-based teachings and just some really great practical applications.
This class has just really rocked my world.
It has given me a vision for not just the different things that we might focus on as parents who are trying to raise our kids biblically, like how our kids are behaving or what we're doing with discipline, but also the things of the heart.
We now have a game plan to how we want to raise our children. We have so many answers to the questions that have been in our mind.
It's not just these hypothetical situations, or it's not just this, here's what I think you should do. It's, let me show you where in Scripture this is.
Do your legacy a favor and yourself a favor and just do it.
One of the best things that we've done this year, one of the best investments we've made this year, and I could not recommend it more.
We're no longer fearing dark days ahead, but we're so excited to raise lights, to be leaders for the next generation.
I liked the motto, take it 1 year at a time, because I knew myself. Yeah. And I know that for myself, the pressure of the thought of I'm going to do this for X more amount of years was way too weighty for me. But I will say that once I conquered a certain grade level with that first, it was like easier to envision doing that with everybody else. And so, and I'm sure that anyone who's homeschooled for any amount of years, you can relate to that, right? It's kind of like anything that you do in life. You have a baby and you think, I could totally do that again. I remember, or at least I felt that way. It was empowering. And I think that, for a lot of moms, it's the fear of the unknown and the fear of what man makes it out to be that can seem discouraging and potentially tempt you to not be confident enough to move forward in doing it, right? And so for myself, I just felt like I didn't want to put a limit on my kids, a limit on myself. So it was like, take 1 year at a time. And I honestly, for the moms out there that are really gun shy to homeschool, I think that's actually really good advice. Take it 1 year at a time. Look at the fruit. Evaluate what you've experienced. I know that for me, that was something that it was like, okay, the fruit, relational fruit, character fruit, discipline fruit. When I say discipline fruit, it's like, wow, my kids are mature. They're disciplined. They're learning these skills. They're staying faithful at them. Like certain things like that. Like I looked at that kind of stuff and I went, that beyond, like that would literally have disappeared if they were gone for as many hours as they would be gone if I put them in school. And so, for a lot of women, you need to see the fruit of your labor and then look back on it. And that needs to help you with making your decision moving forward. Right. And so, and I think that there's something really powerful in giving yourself that freedom versus having to think about what you're going to do for the next 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
That could be really overwhelming.
I think that what people really want to know is, how do you make a good decision? How do you know you're making a good decision? There's so many. That used to be when you were starting, there was very few options, curriculum, things like that. But nowadays, it can feel like there's too many options. And how do I make sure that it's the best thing? And you know what? There's a lot of good things, and good things are going to do well. I think it's the big benefit is more that you're more quantity time with your children and having the mission. I loved your episode last week with Leslie Nunnery talking about missional homeschooling because that's the main point. So let's keep the main thing the main thing. What's the why? It's that you're discipling your children through all those moments you didn't plan. So that's really it. But now on an academic sense, you do want to make good decisions. And so, Angie, what are some of the ways to know if you're making a good decision? How do you make a good decision? How do you include God in the decision making? And because there's a lot of pressure to go with, friends and trends, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. I think that you already mentioned it, and everyone who's listening has probably already got this. Like, obeying God is really the first most important thing, right? Like, I think of Proverbs 14:1. It says, "A wise woman builds her house, and with her own hands she tears it down." And that really, it's not the literal building of the frame of the house and the foundation and these different things. It's that's actually a metaphor for the building of relationships and building the home. And what are you teaching your kids? That builds your family. It builds your legacy, your home. That is your home, right? Like that there's this picture, this word picture that we as women have, understanding that the choices that we make build it or they tear it down. There's no in between. And I think that, we say that often in regards to marriage. Your marriage is either growing, which growing would equal thriving. So it's either growing or it's not growing anywhere, which means it's failing, actually.
I would say you're moving towards thriving, or you're
surviving,
or you're regressing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like in survival mode.
Yeah.
And I would say it's the same thing in regards to like the decisions that you make in building your family. It's like you're either growing in those relationships or those relationships, like there's no such thing as stagnant. If they're stagnant, that means they're in survival mode. Do you know what I mean?
I want to bring a new texture into it, like a real practical how to make a decision. I taught this on the Resolute Man show. It's the art of clear thinking, but I'm going to give it to you real quick here. And that is there's so much noise. And Harvard Business Review shares that the study that after 17 minutes, and when you get distracted, it takes 17 minutes to get back to the same focus you were in before you're distracted. So that is a notification, that is looking at the phone, checking Instagram, that is a kid talking to you, whatever.
Phone ringing.
So moms, I guarantee you, are constantly distracted. You're never getting to your best thinking in your normal mode of things. So what you have to do, and gents listening too, what we have to do, this is helping your work too, is you've got to get alone. And you've got to shut everything off. There's got to be no way for a distraction to happen for an hour, like a solid hour. I've done it for 2 hours straight before, but a solid hour where there's nothing. And all you have is your journal and a crayon. I said crayon just because I wanted to get your attention, but pencil or pen, right? And you literally have it open and you write down the problem. The problem is which curriculum am I going to use?
Or are you going to homeschool or not?
Any of those, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And you've already, this is taking in mind, you've already considered many things. You know what your friends are doing. You know the pressures on you. You know what your church community might be doing. You know what this group of friends and that group of friends. You've heard about these things. You've researched some things, right? You're already in the know.
Yeah.
Okay. So now how do you distill it down to the decision? Well, you're by yourself, maybe in a coffee shop, as long as the people walking by doesn't bother you. That actually helps me focus. I don't know why. So then, and you have it and you write that down, and then different personalities. Some of you are going to draw a line and draw a circle of an option, draw a line, draw a circle. Some of you are list people. You're going to write lists. I'm both, but you write lists and you write out. And I want you just to forget about being perfect. Forget about having right things you're writing down, but just literally write, let the flow and back up for a second. Pray first. Pray that God would be over it in the beginning of this and that he would give you wisdom in the right direction, right things. And then you do this flow and you just write all these things down. And then what you're going to start to do is you're going to start to crystallize and clarify some right directions. And you might get it down to a short list. And now this is going to be way more effective, by the way, to come together as a married couple if there's a short list. Like you've narrowed it down, you have a lot of thinking, a lot of praying, or the Lord might just reveal to you your direction. And I just think that's so important to get alone, no distractions, include God in it and pray, and then do this journaling exercise for a solid hour. The hardest thing to do is to actually think of separated from the pressures on you, separated from everybody else's opinions, the noise of what's online, all the different things, and go, who is my family? Who am I? I'm going to be teaching it. Who is our marriage? What are we going to be doing? What do I believe the future holds? What is important? What do I have convictions in? And what is this curated education supposed to look like? And Lord, please help me to clarify that because I don't want to make a mistake. That's going to help you.
I think that when it comes to the woman, I would say that probably 9 times out of 10, the women are in charge of the education, or if they're homeschooling. And largely the women are, if they're taking their kids to a charter school or to a co-op or to a private school, I would say 9 times out of 10, the women are still the ones that are taking them, dropping them off, involved in the PTA, all that kind of stuff. And so I know that being the one that their education has kind of landed in my jurisdiction area, I know that I would not have had the confidence to move forward in saying yes to something as daunting as homeschooling if it wasn't for my husband's support. But here's the deal. He said at the beginning of this podcast episode that at first he didn't want to homeschool. I also have to echo that. At first, I didn't want to homeschool. Neither of us did. So we had to be open and humble enough to hear from the Lord what his will was for our family, not what our will was for our family. And so really, like, that is a reflection of where you're at in your walk with the Lord. And you have to come to a place first and foremost where you surrender all. You surrender your kid. You surrender their education. You surrender it all to the Lord, and you're willing to say, Lord, this is like before you start writing down pros and cons, before you start the thinking process in the prayer time. I remember saying, Lord, I want your will for my kids because I know my will is going to have some fleshly stuff in it. And so praying that, and I have a psalm for you guys. It's Psalm 111, verse 10. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you want to make wise choices for your kids in regards to their education, that is going to require wisdom. And this is literally saying the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So do you fear the Lord? Here's my question for you. Do you actually fear the Lord? Do you fear the Lord enough to do the hard thing that you know that he's nudging you to do, that maybe the world and man is saying is not wise, and it might be very countercultural to what your family has done in the past or what your church community is doing or what your friends are doing, and you're like, I might be the only one doing this, whatever it is. I just want to challenge you to take it before the Lord, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And you have to make this decision in wisdom, not based upon your fears, your past experiences. It can't be based upon what you think other people are going to think of you. It literally has to be between you and God. Ultimately, it has to be an act of obedience. The next part of that verse says, all those who practice it, meaning the fear of the Lord, all those who practice it have good understanding. It is so important that we have full understanding, right? The fear of the Lord is like, Lord, I want to raise my kids up in you. I want them to love you. I have a fear of the Lord and a reality, like when you're reading the word, because you have a fear of the Lord, you're reading the word, and then you start viewing the world that you live in light of the word of God. It literally changes your worldview. We've talked about biblical worldviews, biblical perspectives on different aspects of what's happening in the world and current events over the last 6.5 years with this podcast. But every single time we go back to the Word of God, because we know that as fleshly humans, it's easy for us to have an opinion about something, but ultimately, what does God's Word say about this? And so when it comes to making hard decisions for your kids and their education, and you know that you are influencing who they're going to become, ultimately, because you're their parent and you're the most influential person in their life, because you have to make these hard decisions, and these hard decisions on if they join that co-op or this co-op, or if they do that activity, or if they're underneath that person's teaching, or if they read that curriculum, or they're in that peer group. You understand that the decisions that you make as a parent are ultimately going to influence their opinions, their worldview, and who they become. You know that. So you feel the weightiness already. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone. I just want us to understand the incredible influence that we have. And we have choices. And the choices that we make impact who our kids become. And who they become impacts how they parent your grandkids. And this is massive. It's bigger than just today. And I think that having that vision, which we're going to talk about in a minute, we have to understand how much having that vision of the long term affects what we do today. And so if you don't have a vision, that's also a big problem. So when Isaac's talking about writing down your decisions and your choices and spending a day thinking, or even an hour where there's zero distractions, can I just say for moms, leave your phone in the car. Go into the coffee shop, but leave your phone in the car. There can't be a notification buzzing that phone to where your table rattles. You got to be alone with God. And then you sit alone with your paper and you start making your pros and cons list on what kind of school you're going to choose for your kids. But you take it before the Lord and you say, God, help me to have a biblical worldview. When I'm writing this pros list, help me have a biblical worldview when I'm writing the cons list. Let me operate in reality of the way you see the fallen world that I'm living in. Help me to make the decisions wisely, Lord. I fear you and I just want to obey you. And when you have that, and that is your main focus, guess what starts to disappear? All of man's expectations, the fear of man, the fear of what the mom's, your mom's going to say, the fear of what your mother-in-law is going to say, the fear of what your sister-in-laws are doing, the fear of what your church community is doing or not doing, the fear of what your neighbors are doing, or what your kids' best friends' parents are doing. It all starts to disappear as soon as you start growing in the fear of the Lord.
What's the godliness and the right peer influences, and secondarily, who you get to spend time with. But really what matters is who are the kids they're actually going to spend time with, and whatever you put them in.
That's right. You get to choose, especially the younger your kids are, you need to choose well, because you're modeling for them what it looks like to choose friends when they get older. And there's going to be a time where they're still living under your roof, but they're in charge of choosing their friends. So if you modeled it well when they were little, that's a big thing. And I think that this education decision, simply because of the sheer amount of hours that they are going to be spending with peers at school, that's why this is such a big decision. And then, after you've written your pros and your cons and you've prayed about it, and you're giving it to the Lord, and you're asking, Lord, would you open my eyes, direct me? I just want to obey you. Then you start thinking thoughtfully about the things that your kids should learn, and you lay that before the Lord's feet. This is the thing. I think that as moms, I used to think that it was something that I had to come up with. I had to decide. But here's the deal. God already has a plan. God already has a will for your kids. You just got to be within God's will, which means you got to seek him. So when you say, Lord, I want to be thoughtful about what my kids are learning this year. Yeah, maybe I do look at the scope and sequence just to make sure that they're learning, they're on track with learning the next thing or being stimulated or whatever. Oh, this year we're going to be doing division. Oh, this year we're going to be doing this, right? And that can be helpful. But at the same time, it's Lord, what is it that you see that they need to grow in this year? What are they passionate about so that I could incorporate delight-directed studies so that they have a love for learning? That's exciting to sit and think about your kids and how you could make it more fun for them to learn, and that they could grow in this and they could feel more confident and more you know what I mean? I know that once the kids learn how to read, they just something lights a fire in them, and they just feel more confident
Yeah.
You can see it. It's like the biggest boost in confidence. And so spending serious time like equipping your kids with that skill is really important. But being thoughtful about like what is going to make it fun for them. Like if you're just giving them books that are boring, that are not interesting to them, they're not going to enjoy reading, right? They may learn how to read, but they might not get excited about it. But if you give them something they're interested in, they're learning about it, that changes everything, right? But you don't have, so here's the deal. That right there, for me as a homeschool mom, or not even a homeschool mom, as someone that was trying to decide between homeschooling or not, that reality shows me what some pros and cons are. Because if they're in the school system, they're not going to have a choice on what books they're going to read. But if they're homeschooled, then I do have a choice on what books I assign them to read or not. I can change it from Solomon to Eli. I can change it based upon what they're most interested in. And that's kind of cool, right? And then the next thing that you think about is like how they can learn. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on this because we have an entire homeschool blueprint course that actually has like one whole video on like learning styles and how to determine what your kids' learning styles is. Another hour-long teach on what is your teaching style, how to determine like different models of education and the ways that you're going to potentially be teaching your kids. There's a whole video on different kinds of curriculums that are out there and what can be best for different kinds of kids and grade levels. And then there's also videos that we do together on leaving a legacy. So you got to go check that out. It's called the Homeschooling Blueprint course. You can find out more about that at becourageousministry.org. But you guys, how to learn, like choosing, am I going to do public, private, homeschool, co-op, charter, whatever other decisions are out there. There are some verses that I need to share with you today that I know for me, I just couldn't escape them. I couldn't escape these verses, right? Proverbs 11:2 says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom.
Oh, it's so good. Walking in humility, because pride blocks us hearing from the Lord. It blocks our ability to make best decisions because we have some kind of agenda that could override it, the best decision. And that agenda could be just, that's where my friends are. Or that agenda could be something about yourself versus what's best for the kids. So just be careful of that.
When I think of that verse, you know what I got convicted in was how much I loved my education experience at the public school system. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I thought of all of the fun things that my kids would potentially miss out on that I loved so much that I excelled in. And I realized that there was an element of pride that was in me about my education and about how much knowledge I had in different things. And I had to surrender that before the Lord and realize like learning can happen in many different capacities, not just the way that it was done for me.
Which is so good in hindsight because 9 kids and many of them are wired very differently than their mom.
True. Yeah.
And they would have not excelled in that environment. In the same way.
Another verse this one is really important. We talk about this in the Courageous Parenting program. It's part of our discipleship. We have an entire teaching session on how to disciple your children, which is super important in regards to education because actually what you're doing if you have them homeschooled is that you're discipling them. If you send them away and they're under someone else, they're actually being discipled by someone else. Okay, did you hear what I said? If you send them to be learning from someone else, they're being discipled by someone else. That's right. Meaning they might be just learning history, but no, they're not. I'm sorry. They're not learning history. They're learning to look through the history of the world through that teacher's worldview. So if that teacher has a different worldview than you, they're being discipled by them and how to view the world.
That's the same with co-ops, homeschool co-ops. You have teachers in there with different doctrine, different ways of looking at things.
I would even say peer influences can be that way in a certain degree, right? Where worldviews are definitely influenced on people. But here's a verse for that. This is Jesus in Luke chapter 6, verse 40. It says, a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone when he is fully trained will be like his teacher. And so this is incredibly humbling, first of all, because if you are training your kids like to realize that they're potentially going to become like you, that's a huge accountability to like be better, first of all.
Yeah.
It's a little scary if you're viewing yourself in light of the gospel and you realize they're going to be like me. That's kind of scary in some ways. But at the same time, it's like, do you want unity in your family? Like when you are sold out for Christ and you love the Lord and you're building a house that loves the Lord, and you want your kids to build a house that loves the Lord, right? Then it's like, why would you have someone else who doesn't love the Lord disciple your children so they can become like them? That just doesn't even make sense. It literally feels like you're shooting yourself in the foot, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an old phrase my grandma used to say. So that was Luke 6:40. I think that's an important verse in making this sort of decision. Here's another one. In 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5 and 6, it says, we destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience when your obedience is complete. Here's the deal. This is so crazy. Verse 4, just before, it says, for the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. I would say that everyone listening to this podcast would agree that there have been strongholds, a spiritual fight for kids' hearts in the public education system. I think that like you're blind if you don't see that.
all throughout society.
Yeah.
What they put on billboards, what they're trying to hit through media, what they're
television,
trying to hit everywhere,
cartoons.
everywhere.
It's literally everywhere. There are
Spiritual
strongholds.
confusion is everywhere.
It's spiritual stronghold, like everywhere, right? And so what does the Bible say? It says, for the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God. So where you're thinking about sending your kids, are there arguments raised, are there lofty opinions raised against the knowledge of God coming from that institution? That would be like, that right there is like a hands down, okay, I'm done. I literally obviously can't send them to that specific place anymore because there are lofty opinions being raised against the knowledge of God. And so now—
Have you ever seen that happen in homeschool communities, Ange, or even some Christian circles? Have you ever seen?
Well, for
some
sure.
of those
I mean,
things happen?
we've been a part of co-ops in the past. We've been a part of 3 different co-ops actually, and then also like an adventure field day. So I guess 4 different types of co-ops, I guess, over the last 21 years. And there was one that didn't last very long. I think it was just a few weeks, simply because there was literally nothing protecting the environment or people who were signing up, in the sense of like it being exclusively Christian. And so there were a lot of different kinds of beliefs, spiritual new age, people who were using crystals and different things that are blatantly blasphemous against the word of God, witchcraft, stuff like that. And so these people are coming in with their kids and it's their way of life. It's their belief system. And usually your belief system comes up in conversations because it's part of what you believe. It's part of your conviction, right? And so, and it also is played out in how people live their lives and the different lifestyle choices that they make. And then it kind of stirs up
But this was highly
confusion.
rated, highly encouraged near where we lived. And
yeah. And so
so
you come to a place where you have to start realizing like, okay, what are the standards of the co-op, for example, that I'm a part of? And here's the deal. As adults who are mature in Christ, like you can discern the difference between right and wrong, and you have a biblical worldview. You understand you're in a fallen world. You've already been regenerated by being born again in Christ. You have security of salvation. You understand grace and forgiveness. But your little 4-year-old, your little 9-year-old does not have that spiritual maturity. They just don't. Children are very impressionable. And so that's why they need parents. That's why God gave them parents, to protect their innocence, to preserve their innocence. And so there needs to be like decisions that are made based upon safety for kids. And so like at the end of when you're writing your pros and cons, I would literally write down where does safety of spiritual teachings come in? What about safety of physical teachings come in? Like there are so many things that need to be evaluated today, and we need to take the rose-tinted glasses off and realize that God has called us to literally be active, pick up our weapons of warfare, and destroy strongholds and destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, not indoctrinate our children with them, creating disunity in the family. So it's a really big deal. Then the last verse that I wanted to share with you guys in regards to just the decisions that you make, here's another one. It's in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 9. It says, do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods which have not benefited those devoted to them. And so this is literally even just talking about like different sacrifices and different foods and waywardness, different teachings. It's literally this passage of scripture is titled "Sacrifices Pleasing to God," right? And the two verses before it says, "Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings. For it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace." Is there going to be biblical grace being fed to your children in the education system, place, co-op, activities that you're putting them in? Mm-hmm. It is good for them is what the word says, right? And so it's like, are we choosing what's good for them or are we choosing what's not good for them? Because there's really no in between. There's what's good for your kids and there's what's not good. There's not what's half good. Looking for a math curriculum that actually works? Meet CTC Math. It's a full K-12 curriculum that's flexible, effective, and designed to make sense. The secret? Short, engaging video lessons that break down tricky concepts into easy-to-understand steps. Whether you're homeschooling or just need a supplement, CTC Math fits your routine, not the other way around. And with 24/7 access to all lessons from all grades, your kids can learn anytime and anywhere. Ready to take the stress out of math? Visit ctcmath.com and start your free trial today. That's ctcmath.com. Confidence in math that starts here. Hey guys, I want to share with you about a program we've been loving at the Tolpin household. Studies by University of Arkansas, Ohio State, and American Psychological Association, and more show that preteens who participate in art show increased brain activity in areas responsible for focus, planning, and critical thinking. That's why we're partnering with Creating a Masterpiece. They offer award-winning online art programs for ages 4 to 104. Get on-demand access to drawing programs, art lessons, art history, watercolors, charcoal, sketches, and so much more. And all at one low rate for your entire household. Just a lesson or two a week can nourish your child's brain in a really powerful way. So visit creatingamasterpiece.com to sign up today. That's creatingamasterpiece.com because anyone can create a masterpiece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next point is your vision and legacy. If it's strong, then you're not just going to let friends and trends sway you in inferior directions. But if it's weak, you're likely to move in directions where friends and trends are thriving. And so even if it's not the best. So you have to catch yourself on that. You have to not be prideful, to think about that, be humble and go, am I more of a follow the friends and trends? Or am I more of a really researching, asking the Lord and processing and journaling and thinking through what is absolutely the best direction for my family, even if it means I won't see so-and-so as much. And I think that is what you want to do. Now, the beautiful thing is many times if you're in biblical community and you're building relationships, it'll be in the same direction as friends. And that's wonderful. That's what you want. That's why it's so important to be part of a church where there's strong biblical like-mindedness that's cultivating. And you want to look for that.
I think that not having vision makes it harder to stay consistent over the years. When I think about when I think specifically about extracurricular activities or different subjects that you would change to over the years, when I think of vision for legacy, I know that you and I had sat down and we were like, okay, we want a legacy of good hard work ethic. We want a legacy of faith. We want a legacy of worship. We want a legacy of prayer. We want these different things. It's like, okay, then that means we need to have time in every day to be doing those things so that our children develop the habit or the discipline of doing those things in their life, right? Because that's what has to happen in order for it to continue on, right? It has to be a regular part of their life. It's kind of like going to church. Are you committed to the bride of Christ? Do you go to church on a regular basis? Now, you don't have that attitude in a legalistic way where you never have a vacation or, you go even when you're sick or things like that. But instead, it's like, no, I want to go. Like you go because you desire to worship God. You go because you desire to learn the word of God. And when your kids grow up with that, they benefit from both the habit of going on a regular basis, but also the heart behind it. And so it's super important that you teach them the heart behind it. And I think that is actually, if there's one thing you take away, as parents, whatever decision you make, you don't want to just like parent your child and make that decision for them, but instead you make that decision for them because you're the parent, but then you teach them the why. And that's when legacy is actually cultivated. That's when they grow up and they have the bigger vision for why on certain decisions. And then you see more of unity within families multi-generationally, where they're like, oh no, I see the value in homeschooling also because I get to be cultivating strong sibling relationships or whatever it is, right? And so I think that this is a fun exercise to sit down and do with your spouse is like, what is the vision for our legacy that we want? And how would each of these different educational choices or even curriculums or co-ops benefit or stifle the vision we have for our legacy?
There's a full 1 hour teaching of Angie and I talking about this in the Homeschool Blueprint too. So that could be something you can watch as a married couple.
We dive deeper into the different legacies.
Really interesting. So vision and legacy, if that's weak, then you're going to fall to lesser things. But if that's strong, then you know what to say yes and no to. And I think in life, that is important. And as much as it's important to know what to say yes to, it's important to say no to.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
I also think, when it comes to vision and we're talking about like staying consistent or steadfast, faithful in certain things. Now, I get that like sometimes you have to make a choice. There was one year where we put a child in a private Christian school for first grade while I was homeschooling the other kids at the same time, like preschool and kindergarten. And that experience just further impressed upon me the need to bring them home and homeschool them. And that's a whole story that I actually share in the Homeschool Blueprint course. But I want to say that like making a decision, like as a parent, you can switch, you can make a decision. You have the power to do that, and kids are resilient. But I do want to warn you about something. I do want to warn you about not making a decision in confidence. And when you don't make a decision in confidence, you're more likely to switch every year and not be consistent over the years and be constantly pulling your kids out. Like you're never satisfied. Oh, I didn't like this experience this year. So now we're going to pull them out of charter school and we're going to do this co-op. And then the next year it's this. And then next year it's that. And if you're bopping around like that and there isn't consistency, that actually is more harmful for kids long term. And they may feel like they're not sure about what to do with their own children when they're older. And so I think that one of the things that's super, super helpful is having that vision helps you to know why you as a couple are making the decision. You've done the pros and cons list and it's been in consideration of like literally what are the pros and cons.
And brainstorm. It's not just pros and cons, it's brainstorming things.
Exactly.
Ideas and things.
But then you also have like you're brainstorming the vision was what I was going to say next, right? And then you're making the decision looking at all of these things and going, okay, this is really obvious, and you can move forward with confidence, and that confidence helps you to stay consistent from year to year. Let me give you an example. I'll just bring up one legacy thing, is that we wanted to have a legacy of worship in our family. And I didn't play any instruments that could lead worship. I played like clarinet and glockenspiel. And you didn't. And so for us, it was like stepping out on a limb and investing in piano teachers, guitar teachers, violin instructors over the years. And we've spent thousands of dollars on that in the last 26 years. But it was an important thing that we never quit on, regardless of if the kid was like super good at it or not, because it was like, it's about worship. It's not about being the best classical pianist do you know what I mean? There was an underlying, I want you to be able to worship the Lord. I want you to be able to have the skill to lead your family and to lead other people, because we are all called to worship at certain points, right? And so because we had that conviction, here we are 26 years later, and we have kids leading worship at our church. And kids that are super passionate about it and interested in it. And I know that for myself, every year, music is one of the subjects that we are going to continue to be faithful on, because we have that vision of legacy worship, right? And it doesn't mean that they're going to be like professional in the future. There was never that pressure for the kids, but it definitely took it took off one subject that I had to figure out over the years. Like if I just think about worship alone, right? And so what is it for you guys to sit down and visioneer what legacies you want to see continued on? And then that impacts the educational choices that you make. And then you go, okay, well, for sure, we're always going to do that one thing or those three things, right? And then there's less decision-making happening over the years.
Hey, the final unprecedented times tip, it's actually a major point, is in all of this, in all your decision-making, you want to be thoughtful about what kids actually should learn and how maybe some things have changed based on the futures they're going to launch into in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, depending on where your kids are at and your future kids you haven't had yet. So it's a big deal. It's like, what is the kind of change that's going to happen just in the next 5 years? It's pretty big. Now you look out your windows. I'm looking out the windows here. If you're watching on YouTube, and I'm seeing the beautiful grass and trees and the horizon, and it looks much the same as it did 4 years ago when we moved here, although some improvements. And so for me, if I look around, I'm like, the world hasn't changed very much in my environment. But that doesn't mean things aren't drastically changing, and they're going to even more drastically change. It's not fear. It's just if we're walking in wisdom, then we're paying attention to what's real. You can't walk in wisdom if you don't know what's real. If you're just in your own cocoon and shutting everything off and expecting everything to be the same and training up the next generation in the exact same way, that's not wisdom, actually. There's some things that are core and the same, and there's some things that need to change. And it's up to you and your husband to figure out what you think those are for your children. I'll just give you an example. It's crazy, but Neuralink is Elon Musk's one of his companies, and it's going to be highly embraced. Why? Because there's going to be story after story, thousands of stories soon of people that couldn't see and can now see, people that couldn't move and now they can move, engage in society and control a computer to do work. Then they couldn't do that before. There's people that'll be able to talk again, probably. So all of these things that are going to look like, miracles in a way through technology is going to cause people to embrace it. But then, what does it also enable? A whole another side of things that aren't being talked about. One, actually, Elon just let out this week, which is, he goes, because of where technology is and where we're at, somebody's going to be able to sit down wherever they're at and control an Optimus robot. Yes, he calls his robots Optimus. And in the future, those robots are going to be able to have a sense of feel, and they're going to be able to do things humans can do, and they'll be able to think in their mind because they have a chip in their mind and control completely that robot and actually feel what the robot feels and these kinds of things. So you think about, I'll just leave it there.
It's kind of scary.
You just think about these things that are being bragged about because technology is here. Also, artificial intelligence. Well, now AGI, they think is pretty much here, close to here. I see Elon kind of bragging about his new AI that is close to AGI, maybe even there in some ways. AGI is artificial general intelligence, which simply means on the same level or higher than humans. So here we are now. Intelligence is, we were talking about a year ago, actually maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, probably talking about.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
How coding is a job that'll disappear in a practical sense, like actually writing code will disappear. And we're now there pretty much. I'm hearing things that, robots are writing code, and very quickly it's going to be like mainstream, where anybody that their job making 200, 300 grand a year, because that's a lot of times what coders were making, actually writing code will not be needed by human beings. I mean, we're pretty much there.
Crazy.
We're very close to being there. Now, are there still going to be jobs for people that know how to code? There will be some jobs because they're going to be directing robots, but it's going to be different. And there's going to be less of those jobs. So it's just important to think about those things. And then what is rising? This is in the news in a major way, mainstream news right now, which is HVAC, electricians, plumbing are going to be massively in need and in demand because there's a lack of labor that have those skills. And so instead of just thinking about, well, it could be, there's nothing wrong with it. Your son could be a plumber, and that could be a beautiful thing, a wonderful thing. But I think of it more like this. Well, how could my son be a plumber that then leads a business of plumbers? So then what is the skill set that's involved to run a business and lead people? And so I think of less of the skill of plumbing is super important. They can go get that training whenever that's needed. But what's going to be important all growing up then is how to lead, how to communicate, how to run a business, how to lead people, how to be effective in that, treat people well, good character, honesty, all of those things that are so important. A vision for it, experience doing it. It reminds me of when we had the RV business and Austin was in charge of leading his siblings who were in charge of cleaning certain things, helping with certain things on the RV, and they got paid according to how well they worked and what they got done. And Austin decided each job, how much they got paid, and there was never conflict. It's no wonder, he's such a good leader now. It's not just because of that. It's because of many things his mom did too, is raising him up and homeschooling him and being there and helping him to understand leadership that we both have done. So I just think that, being thoughtful about what they should learn and what should be different and what can AI not replace, think about those things. Just because AI can write and everybody can use it to write things doesn't mean we don't double down on writing. We are going to be double downing on writing and the importance of that skill because it wires the mind.
Yeah.
It's not about can they write so that they can write as much as writing and being great at writing means they have great thinking. And that is key. So what you're going to see a decline in?
It's thinking.
Great thinking because people stop focusing on teaching writing. So you got to think about these things.
Right. So as you're thinking about the future and you're sitting down with your husband or your spouse, right? And you're maybe the husband's listening to the podcast today. And you're thinking about the future and maybe you have some kids that are pre-teenage and you are thinking about what subjects to start moving them towards. I want to point you to a few of our other podcasts. If you were to just in a Brave browser, Google or whatever browser, and you put courageous parenting, and then you put unprecedented times, or you put homeschooling, a bunch of our podcast episodes are potentially going to come up. I know that we have one that's on 11 reasons why we homeschool. That would also be an incredibly encouraging episode for you to be listening to while you're trying to evaluate pros and cons, because we literally list 7 really big things that were the main things, the main reasons, if you will, that helped us to decide to originally be committed to homeschooling. And I think that, this is where as iron sharpens iron, where Titus 2 men and women are sharing after 20 plus years of homeschooling, what our experience has been. Has it always been easy? No. Sometimes you hit a topic or a subject that's really hard, but that's where you're able to utilize other curriculums like CTC Math or different things that we've shared here on the podcast or in the Homeschool Blueprint course. We talk about a lot of different curriculums, and there is help out there for you. You just need to get the help. And so if you're feeling like inadequate, not able to be homeschooling your kids, I just want to encourage you with one last thought. None of us are adequate, actually. We need Jesus to help us. And we need to have confidence in the Lord. And we need strong marriages. We need our spouse to believe in us, to speak life into the one that is doing the homeschooling needs the support of the other one. And I do know that there sometimes are marriages where the wife really wants to homeschool, but the husband doesn't believe in her. Can I just speak to that for a second? If that is your situation, I want you to start praying and asking the Lord to rise your husband up to be walking with you in an understanding way, that he would believe in you, that he would have confidence in how God has made you, because I have faith and belief and confidence that God has made every person with a purpose, with a plan, and that he has a good will for your kids.
You're
He
absolutely
chose you.
capable. And if you're a
Yes.
husband, hey, gents, if you're listening, encourage your wives. And you really need to work on yourself and to think about your words and your thoughts about your wife. If you don't believe that your wife can do it, or if you're communicating some things that are leading to her to think that, and maybe you don't believe that, but wow.
Realize it's a confidence
breaker. You have to search your heart out And think through that, because maybe you have way wrong thinking and lofty thinking, academic loftiness, elitism in your mind that she doesn't need to be or have. She needs to not have any kind of degree, teaching certificate. None of that matters. What matters is a heart for children and taking one step forward at a time and getting the resources you need. So I think that's super important. Did you have something, Angie?
Yeah, I just was thinking of a scripture. Again, we went over this in 2 Corinthians 10:5, where it says, we tear down arguments and every lofty thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And I think that elitism is actually lofty thinking. It's prideful thinking. It's elevating knowledge and worldly knowledge over the value of godly knowledge, and understanding that all humans we've been designed by God to be able to learn things, right? And the time will come, but when our kids are young, to be pouring into them the knowledge of God, to be pouring into them and having that atmosphere of grace and the knowledge of grace and understanding, and how the leadership skills and the way that we view the world is the most empowering and impactful thing that we could be giving our kids as a foundation, and understanding that these early years, these first 12 years of education, are the foundation of the rest of our kids' lives and how they're going to view the world. And if they end up going on to learning how to do brain surgery, how to be a chiropractor, at least they have the foundation of biblical knowledge to then be able to discern truth from lies when they're older, right? But if we're just like immediately, we got to put them on the trajectory, we got to stick them on the hamster wheel, we got to stick them on the treadmill of worldly knowledge at a young age so they're far ahead and they can be even a better surgeon when they're older, that we've believed a lie of devaluing the power of the knowledge of God and of family relationships and interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence and all the things, the social skills that are learned by being at home with siblings of all different ages. I literally think that there's narrow-mindedness when we loft up, we elevate something that is actually not the knowledge of God. And so I just really want to challenge, if anybody's listening right now who's potentially struggling with this is what I used to struggle with. This is why I'm able to speak of it so clearly. I struggled with making an idol out of academic knowledge. I loved knowledge. I was a voracious reader. I loved learning all of the things. I loved going to college. But now I would not make the same decision for my kids because I understand what the atmosphere is and I understand what the actual agenda is behind a lot of those institutions. And it's not worth it. And so you have to come to a place of being able to humble yourself before the Lord and go, God, I think I'm confused. And I had to get there. Maybe you have to get there. God, I'm confused. And would you help me to have a biblical worldview of this situation and show me what to do for my kids?
It's so good. So good, Angie. I love the passion. And I'm so glad you joined us. Would you share this episode? Where do you listen, by the way? I'd love to hear from you. Write in comments wherever you listen. If it's YouTube, write in a comment. Hey, I'm here. I listen on YouTube. Or if it's Spotify or if it's Apple, you can let us know with a comment there. It also helps the algorithms, helps the show get out there. We're super motivated right now that we have a renewed vigor towards the Courageous Parenting podcast and a need. We have heard just recently from so many people how relevant the episodes are and helpful the episodes are.
People that have been listening for 5 or 6 years.
Let's go. Let's get it out there. We need to be a team. And because that's the only way 10 million legacies are going to be impacted throughout the world. And so would you help us do that and give us reviews, share it on social media, get the link and share it out there. We so appreciate it. Share it in your churches with people at church too. That would be really helpful. We so appreciate you guys.
See you next time.